You look like a stray black dog somebody beat blind.
Todd Wilson.
Who let you off the leash?
A parking lot full of people watching. He grabbed her cane and snapped it over his knee. Grace Underwood didn't flinch.
Give me my cane back.
Or what, you gonna feel your way to the police station?
His boys howled. Todd kicked her legs out. Grace hit the concrete face first.
Your mama should have drowned you at birth. Blind and black, God made you twice worthless!
30 people watched. Not one moved. Grace lay there for 3 seconds. Then she picked up both pieces of that cane, stood up. Because what happened next? Todd Wilson and every one of his boys wished they'd never touched that cane. And they'll carry the proof for the rest of their lives. Macon, Georgia. A small city where everybody knows everybody, and everybody knows to mind their own business. The kind of place where oak trees line the streets and church bells ring on Sundays. But behind closed doors, certain people run things. And if you're black, poor, or different, you learn real quick where you stand. Grace Underwood moved here 8 months ago. At least that's what the neighbors were told. To the people of Macon, Grace was simple to understand. 24 years old, black, blind. She worked the front desk at a small legal aid office on Whitman Avenue, answering phones, organizing files by touch, tapping her way through the front door every morning at 8:15 with a white cane and dark glasses. She was polite, quiet, kept to herself. The kind of person you'd feel sorry for, and then forget about by lunch. That was the whole point. Grace Underwood was not blind. She had never been blind. Her vision was 20/20. She was Special Agent Grace Underwood, Federal Bureau of Investigation. Graduated top 12 in her class at Quantico. Black belt in Krav Maga. Advanced certification in Arnis, the Filipino stick fighting system that turns any rod, pipe, or cane into a weapon. The white cane she carried every day wasn't a mobility aid. It was rattan core, custom-weighted, built to the exact specifications of an Arnis fighting stick. Legal to carry anywhere, invisible in plain sight. Her mission was simple on paper, dangerous in practice. For the past 3 years, a woman named Carolyn Davis had been running a quiet empire in Macon. She owned Peachtree Holdings, a property management company that controlled over 40 rental units across 3 neighborhoods. On the surface, she was a businesswoman, respected, connected. She sat on 2 city committees and donated to the Children's Hospital every Christmas. Underneath, Carolyn was something else entirely. She had a system. Her brother, Todd Wilson, ex-bouncer, 2 prior assault charges, both pleaded down, ran a crew of 5 or 6 guys. Derek Moore, the most violent. Kyle Brown, built like a linebacker. Shane Taylor always had his phone out recording. Plus 2 or 3 others who rotated in. Their job was simple. Make life unbearable for black residents in the neighborhoods Carolyn wanted to buy. Harassment, property damage, intimidation. Nothing quite bad enough to make headlines, but enough to make people pack up and leave. Once they left, Carolyn bought the properties at rock-bottom prices. Then she flipped them to developers for 3 times the cost, using city contracts approved by Councilman Brad Anderson, who got a cut of every deal. 6 years. Dozens of families displaced, exposed. Nobody ever investigated because nobody with power ever cared. Until the FBI opened a case, and until Grace volunteered to go in. She spent 6 months training for the cover, learning to live without sight, walking with a cane, reading Braille, eating, cooking, crossing streets, all blind. Her handler, Senior Agent Raymond Brooks, communicated through a device disguised as a hearing aid tucked behind her left ear. Every day, Grace sat at that front desk and played helpless. Every night she went home, locked the door, took off the glasses, and spread case files across her kitchen table. Photos of Carolyn, financial records, property transfers, text messages between Todd and his crew. She was building the case piece by piece. But here's what the FBI didn't fully account for. To build the case, Grace had to let them hurt her. She had to stand there while Todd's crew shoved her, mocked her, stole her cane, and called her things that made her chest burn. She had to fall down and not fight back. She had to look weak, because the moment she looked strong, the cover was blown and 3 years of investigation would disappear. Her best friend in Macon was Denise Holloway, a coworker at the legal aid office who loved filming everything on her phone. Denise didn't know about the FBI. She just thought Grace was the bravest blind woman she'd ever met. She had no idea how right she was, and no idea how wrong. Carolyn had just filed a petition to remove the legal aid office from Whitman Avenue. Grace knew this was the final piece, the last connection between Carolyn, Anderson, and the money trail. But the clock was ticking. Raymond gave her a deadline, 2 more weeks. After that, the Bureau would pull her out, with or without the evidence. 2 weeks. And Todd's crew was getting worse every day. Tuesday morning, 8:05. Grace was 10 minutes from the office, walking the same route she walked every day. Left on Pine, right on Whitman. 42 steps to the front door. She heard them before she saw them. 3 voices. Todd, Derek, Shane. They stepped out from behind a parked truck and blocked the sidewalk. Grace kept walking until Todd's hand slammed flat against her chest and stopped her cold. "Where you going, blind girl? Ain't nobody opened that door for you yet." Grace gripped her cane. "Let me through, Todd." "Todd, you know my name now?" He looked at Derek. "She learnin'. Maybe she ain't that stupid after all." Derek grabbed the cane from behind. One hard yank. Grace's fingers burned as it ripped free. Shane already had his phone up, recording. "Say please," Derek said. He held the cane behind his back. "Please give me my cane." Louder. "Please." Todd leaned in close. His breath smelled like cigarettes and energy drinks. "See, that wasn't hard. But I changed my mind." He took the cane from Derek, walked to the storm drain at the curb, and dropped it through the grate. It clattered 3 feet below the street. "Fetch." Shane zoomed in on Grace, kneeling at the grate. Derek kicked dirty puddle water at her face. It hit her glasses, ran down her chin. Todd laughed so hard he bent over. Grace reached through the iron bars. Her knuckles scraped. Her fingers bled. She pulled the cane out 1 inch at a time. Inside her head, a different Grace was running calculations. Derek is left-handed. Shane always stands furthest back. Todd drops his right shoulder before he shoves. 3 targets. I can end this in 4 seconds. But 8 months of work. Exposed families. Exposed records. A case that could put Carolyn Davis away for 20 years. She swallowed it. All of it. Stood up with a muddy cane and a bleeding hand, and kept walking. Behind her, Todd called Carolyn. "We rattled her good." Carolyn's voice came through crisp. "Good. Do it again tomorrow. I want her gone by the end of the month." Grace heard every word. Not through the phone. Through the listening device she'd planted in Todd's truck 2 weeks ago. That night, she called Raymond. "They're escalating. Carolyn's pushing a timeline. I need them to attack me in public, on camera, in front of witnesses. That's the only evidence that closes this." Raymond paused. "How much more can you take?" Grace looked at her bleeding hand. "Enough." The next 2 weeks were the longest of Grace's life. Week 1 started with Kyle Brown. Grace was crossing Elm Street on her way to the grocery store. She heard heavy footsteps, fast, deliberate, coming from behind. Kyle didn't say a word. He just lowered his shoulder and slammed into her like she was a tackling dummy. Grace flew off the curb. Her knees hit the asphalt. Her cane snapped in half under Kyle's boot. Cars honked. A woman gasped from across the street, but kept walking. Kyle stood over her. "Oops, didn't see you there." He laughed at his own joke and walked away. Grace knelt on the road, holding 2 pieces of a broken cane, blood running down both shins. She had to request a replacement cane from the FBI, her 3rd in 8 months. Raymond shipped it overnight, disguised inside an Amazon box. 3 days later, Shane Taylor posted a video. He'd been following Grace for a week with his phone. Every stumble, every moment she reached for a wall or misjudged a step, he edited it together with trap music and text overlays. "Blind girl lost again," and "Somebody come get your girl." He posted it to TikTok. 50,000 views in 2 days. Derek Moore commented first, "Next time I'll walk her with a leash." Todd replied with 3 crying laughing emojis. Carolyn shared the video from an anonymous account she thought nobody could trace. But Grace had already flagged every alias Carolyn used online. Another piece of evidence, another file in the case. But evidence doesn't stop bruises. Week 2 was worse. Thursday afternoon, Grace was leaving the grocery store with a bag in one hand and her cane in the other. All 5 of them were waiting. Todd, Derek, Kyle, Shane, and a 5th guy Grace had cataloged as Jimmy, last name unknown, rotating member, always quiet, always followed orders. They surrounded her in the parking lot. Todd grabbed the grocery bag and dumped it on the ground. Eggs cracked. Milk splashed across the pavement. Kyle pinned both of Grace's arms behind her back. Derek stepped forward. He flicked her forehead with his index finger. Hard. "Can you see me now?" Flick. "How about now?" Flick. "Nah, you can't see nothing. You can't do nothing." Shane recorded the whole thing. Todd stood back, arms crossed, supervising like a foreman watching his crew. Grace said nothing. Her arms were locked, her head jerked with each flick. Inside her chest, something was burning. Not fear. Rage. The kind that starts in your stomach and crawls up your spine. She could break Kyle's grip in 1 second. Elbow to the solar plexus. She could take Derek's legs out before he blinked. She could have all 5 of them on the ground, gasping in under 15 seconds. But she didn't. Because behind these 5 idiots stood Carolyn Davis. And behind Carolyn stood 6 years of fraud, dozens of displaced families, and a corrupt councilman who signed every dirty contract. If Grace broke cover now, all of it vanished. Carolyn would walk. The families would never get justice. So Grace stood there and took it. Kyle released her. Todd kicked the spilled milk toward her feet. "Clean it up, blind girl. That's all you're good for." They left laughing. The store owner watched through the window, then pulled down the blinds. That night, the community whispered, but did nothing. An elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, knocked on Grace's door. She brought a plate of cornbread and a quiet warning. "Baby, just move away. I've seen what they do. They ran off the Henderson family last year, the Carters before that. You can't win against these people." Grace took the cornbread, smiled. "Thank you, ma'am. I'll be okay." She closed the door, leaned against it, took off the glasses. Her eyes, sharp, clear, seeing everything, stared at the ceiling. She whispered to herself, "Every bruise is evidence. Every video is a count on the indictment. Hold on. Meanwhile, Denise was getting suspicious. It started small. One afternoon at the office, a stapler rolled off the desk, and Grace caught it midair, fast, precise, without hesitation. Denise froze. "Girl, how did you do that?" Grace recovered quick. "Heard it falling. You develop reflexes when you can't see." Denise nodded, but she didn't look convinced. A few days later, they were walking together when a kid on a bicycle came flying around a corner. Grace sidestepped, perfectly, smoothly, a full second before the bike reached her, as if she saw it coming. Denise said nothing. But that night, she watched the parking lot video again, slowed it down, frame by frame. And in one frame, just one, Grace's eyes behind the glasses seemed to track Todd's hand before it moved. Denise saved the screenshot. She didn't know what it meant yet, but she knew something didn't add up. On the other side of town, Carolyn Davis was having dinner with Councilman Brad Anderson at a private restaurant. Anderson was nervous, sweating into his steak. "This is getting attention, Carolyn. That video Shane posted. People are asking questions." Carolyn cut her meat without looking up. "People always ask questions. Nobody ever does anything. That's how this works, Brad." "And if someone does?" Carolyn put her fork down, looked him dead in the eyes. "Who's going to do something? The blind black girl?" She smiled. "She can't even hold on to her own cane." Grace wasn't at that dinner, but the listening device inside Carolyn's handbag, planted 3 weeks earlier during a staged collision on the sidewalk, recorded every word. Another file. Another nail in the coffin. The next morning, Todd called a meeting with his crew. Carolyn had just announced a neighborhood block party, a PR event to show community unity. Todd had different plans. He gathered the boys in his garage. Derek, Kyle, Shane, Jimmy, plus a sixth, a new guy, broad-shouldered, who went by the name Briggs. "Saturday night," Todd said. "The block party. She'll be there. We finish this in front of everyone. Show the whole neighborhood who runs things around here." Derek cracked his knuckles. "All 6 of us?" "All 6. Make it loud. Make it public. I want every person on that block to see what happens when you don't leave when you're told." Grace was listening. Not through a device this time. Raymond had intercepted Todd's phone that morning. She sat in her dark apartment, glasses off, eyes open, and for the first time in 8 months, she smiled. They were walking straight into her trap. Grace called Raymond that night. No small talk, straight to it. "Saturday, the block party. Todd's bringing all 6. They're going to jump me in front of the whole neighborhood." Raymond went quiet for a moment. "You're telling me you want to let them?" "I'm telling you this is the play. 6 men attacking a blind woman in public, dozens of witnesses. Denise will be recording. Your team grabs Carolyn's phone, Todd's phone, and Anderson's office the same night while every eye in Macon is on that parking lot. And if they hurt you before, they won't." "Grace. I need a tactical team within 3 minutes. Plain clothes. Parked on Whitman and 5th. They move on my signal, not before." Raymond exhaled. "If you blow your cover..." "I won't blow my cover. I'm just a blind girl who fought back. Since when is that suspicious?" She hung up. The next call was to Denise. Casual, easy. "You coming to the block party Saturday? Bring your camera. I want memories." Denise laughed. "Girl, I always bring my camera." Friday night. Grace locked every door, drew every curtain. Then she did something she hadn't done in 8 months. She turned the lights on. She picked up her cane, rattan core, custom-weighted, and trained with her eyes wide open. Full speed, full vision. 6 targets, 40 seconds. every strike mapped to a name: Todd, Derek, Kyle, Shane, Jimmy, Briggs. Saturday was coming, and Grace was ready. Saturday evening, the Macon Community Center block party. Folding tables lined the sidewalk. Paper plates, plastic cups, barbecue smoke rising into the Georgia sky. Kids ran between legs. Old men argued about football. Gospel music played from a speaker someone had duct-taped to a fence post. Grace arrived at 6:30. White cane, dark glasses, a yellow sundress Denise had helped her pick out that morning. She walked slow, tapped the ground, played the part she'd played for 8 months. Denise was already there, phone in hand, filming the decorations, the food, the kids. She pointed the camera at Grace and smiled. "There she is, looking good, girl." Grace smiled back, but behind the glasses, her eyes swept the lot. She counted heads, located exits, clocked the FBI plainclothes van parked on the corner of Whitman and 5th, right where she told Raymond. Carolyn Davis stood on a makeshift stage near the entrance, microphone in hand, giving a speech about neighborhood pride and community values. Her voice was warm. Her smile was wide. The crowd clapped politely. Todd Wilson leaned against a truck 30 feet away, beer in hand, watching Grace. Derek stood next to him, Kyle near the dumpsters. Shane sat on a bench, phone already out. Jimmy and Briggs lingered by the alley between 2 buildings. 6. All accounted for. The sun dropped below the roofline. Shadows stretched across the parking lot. The music got louder. The crowd got thicker. At 7:15, Grace excused herself from Denise and walked toward the restrooms near the back of the building. It was quieter there, darker. A narrow passage between 2 brick walls lit by a single bulb above a metal door. She didn't need the restroom. She needed the alley. Todd took the bait in under 2 minutes. Grace heard them before they surrounded her. 6 sets of footsteps, boots on gravel, the clink of a belt buckle, someone cracking their neck. Todd stepped in front of her. Derek and Kyle flanked left and right. Shane, Jimmy, and Briggs sealed the alley behind her. No way out. At least, that's what they thought. "Well, well," Todd said. "Look who wandered off alone." Grace stopped, gripped her cane with both hands. "I don't want trouble, Todd." "You don't want trouble?" He looked at his crew. "Hear that, boys? She don't want trouble." They laughed. Todd grabbed the cane, yanked hard. Grace held on. He yanked again, harder, and ripped it from her hands. He tossed it to Derek. "We told you to leave," Todd said. "You didn't listen. So now we're gonna teach you one last lesson." Kyle shoved her from behind. Grace stumbled forward into Todd's chest. He pushed her back. She hit the brick wall. Her glasses cracked, but stayed on. "Hit her," Carolyn's text had said. "Make it public. Make it loud." Todd wound up, open palm, aimed at her face. This is the moment. Grace caught his wrist mid-swing. Not fumbled, not guessed. Caught it. Clean, fast, like she'd been watching it the whole time. Todd froze. His eyes went wide. "What the?" Grace didn't let him finish. Rewatch moment number 1. The fight. She twisted Todd's wrist inward, hard. He yelped and dropped to one knee. In the same motion, Grace ripped the cane from Derek's hand. He was so shocked he didn't even resist. Cane back. Game on. Derek lunged. Grace sidestepped and drove the cane into his ribs, a short, sharp arnis strike called a whittique. Derek doubled over, gasping. She swept his ankle with the cane tip. He went down face first into the gravel. 2 seconds. 2 down. Kyle charged from the right, all 240 pounds of him. Grace didn't try to match his strength. She stepped off the line, hooked the cane behind his front knee, and pulled. Physics did the rest. Kyle's momentum carried him forward and down. He crashed into the dumpster with a sound like a car wreck. 4 seconds. 3 down. Jimmy came next. He swung wild, a haymaker aimed at her head. Grace ducked under it, jabbed the cane tip into his stomach, and when he folded, she cracked it across the back of his calf. He crumpled like wet paper. 6 seconds. 4 down. Briggs hesitated. He'd seen enough. But pride pushed him forward. He grabbed Grace's shoulder from behind. Bad move. She drove her elbow into his solar plexus, spun, and whipped the cane across his thigh, the femoral nerve. Briggs screamed and dropped, clutching his leg. 8 seconds. 5 down. Todd was back on his feet, bleeding from the mouth where he'd bitten his lip going down. He reached into his back pocket and pulled out a knife. A folding blade. 4 inches. The alley went quiet. Shane had stopped recording, then started again, hands shaking, phone trembling. Todd pointed the knife at Grace. "You're dead, blind girl." Grace stood still, cane in her right hand, left hand open at her side. She tilted her head like she was listening, still playing blind, still in character. Todd lunged. Grace parried the knife hand with the cane, a textbook Arnie's disarm called Snake. The blade spun out of Todd's grip and clattered across the concrete. Before he could react, she drove the cane into his chest, swept both legs, and put him flat on his back. The cane tip pressed against his throat. 10 seconds. 6 down. Todd lay on the ground, wheezing. Derek groaned in the gravel. Kyle sat against the dumpster, holding his knee. Jimmy was curled up. Briggs hadn't moved. The knife lay 5 feet away, untouched. Shane, the cameraman, stood at the mouth of the alley, phone still up, hands still shaking. He looked at Grace. She turned her head toward him. He ran. Grace stood alone in that alley, 6 men on the ground around her. She wasn't breathing hard. She wasn't shaking. She adjusted her cracked glasses, tapped her cane twice on the ground, and walked back toward the music like nothing happened. Denise met her at the corner. She'd heard the noise. She looked past Grace and saw the bodies in the alley. Her mouth fell open. "Grace, what? How?" "They grabbed me," Grace said quietly. "I just reacted." Denise looked at her phone. She'd been recording ambient footage of the party when the noise started. She turned the camera toward the alley just in time to catch the last 15 seconds. Todd on the ground, knife on the concrete. Grace walking away with a cracked pair of glasses and a steady hand. That clip hit the internet at 9:43 p.m. By midnight, 500,000 views. By Sunday morning, 2 million. By Monday, 5 million and climbing. #CaneGirl trended on every platform. #BlindWarrior followed. Martial arts channels broke down the footage frame by frame. Krav Maga instructors called it textbook. Arnis masters called it beautiful. But the comment that spread fastest wasn't praise. It was a question. How does a blind woman know exactly where 6 men are standing? The internet was asking. Denise was asking. And somewhere in a quiet office, Carolyn Davis was asking too. Grace sat in her apartment that night, glasses off, eyes open, reading every comment on a screen she wasn't supposed to be able to see. Her phone buzzed. Raymond. "The video complicates everything. Headquarters wants to pull you out." Grace typed back. 72 hours. That's all I need. Monday morning, 48 hours after the block party. Carolyn Davis sat in the office of her attorney, a man named Richard Foster. Expensive suit, corner office, the kind of lawyer who made problems disappear for people who could afford it. Carolyn slid her phone across the desk. The video. 5 million views and climbing. "I want her arrested," Carolyn said. "Assault, battery. All 6 victims willing to testify." Foster watched the clip twice. "This is edited?" "Shane recorded the whole thing, but we only need the part where she's swinging." Foster nodded slowly. "We cut the first 30 seconds. Start from where she grabs the cane. No context, no provocation. Just a woman beating 6 men with a stick." Exactly. By noon, Todd Wilson and all 5 of his crew had filed police reports. Assault with a deadly weapon, coordinated statements. Same story. They were at the block party, minding their own business, when Grace Underwood attacked them unprovoked with her cane. Todd showed photographs of his swollen wrist. Derek lifted his shirt for the camera, purple bruises across his ribs. Kyle limped into the station on crutches. They looked like victims. They sounded like victims. The edited video hit cable news by dinner time. A blonde anchor introduced the segment with a graphic that read, "Blind woman or trained fighter?" The clip played, starting mid-fight. No shove, no knife, no 6 men surrounding one woman. Just Grace swinging a cane with terrifying precision while bodies fell around her. "Tonight, questions are swirling around a viral video from Macon, Georgia," the anchor said. "Was this self-defense or a calculated attack?" Online, the narrative split in half. One side screamed hero, #CaneGirl, #StandWithGrace. Disability rights groups called it the most powerful self-defense clip they'd ever seen. The other side screamed fraud. "She's not blind. No blind person fights like that. She's trained military. This was a setup." Comments piled up by the thousands. Angry, suspicious, relentless. Tuesday morning. 2 police officers knocked on Grace's door at 7 a.m. "Grace Underwood, you're under arrest for aggravated assault." Handcuffs, back of a squad car, booking, fingerprints, mugshot. The whole thing took 3 hours. She was released on bond by noon. But the damage was already done. By the time she walked out of the station, Reverend James Moore had left a voicemail. "Grace, I'm sorry. The board voted this morning. You're suspended from the office pending the investigation. My hands are tied." Her desk was already cleared. Denise picked her up outside the station. The car ride was quiet for 6 blocks before Denise finally spoke. "Grace, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." "Ask." "Can you see?" The car was silent. Grace stared straight ahead, glasses on, hands folded, face unreadable. "Denise, I'm blind." "Then how did you do what you did in that alley?" "Instinct, training. My grandfather taught me to fight by sound." Denise gripped the steering wheel. "I watched that video 100 times, frame by frame. There's a moment, right before Todd swings, where your eyes move, behind the glasses. You tracked his hand before it came." Grace said nothing. Denise shook her head. "I'm not going to push, but something doesn't add up, and I think you know that." She dropped Grace off at her apartment, didn't come inside, didn't say goodbye. Grace closed the door, leaned against it, pressed both palms against her eyes. The one person in Macon she actually cared about, and the lie was eating through the wall between them. Her phone buzzed. Raymond. "Headquarters is furious. The arrest is on every channel. They want extraction tonight." Grace typed back. "Not yet. This isn't the request, Grace. Carolyn called Anderson 30 minutes ago. I have the recording. She told him to fast-track the Southside land deal while everyone's distracted by my arrest. That's the final transaction, the one that ties everything together. If I leave now, she closes that deal and we lose the case. Raymond didn't respond for 4 minutes. Then, 48 hours. Final. Meanwhile, Carolyn was performing. Rewatch moment number 2, the media trap. She stood on the steps of the Macon courthouse in a black dress, dabbing her eyes with a tissue, cameras everywhere, microphones in her face. "My brother could have been killed," she said, voice cracking. 6 men, unarmed, attacked by a woman who clearly has extensive combat training. This wasn't self-defense. This was violence. And the fact that she pretended to be blind to get sympathy makes it even worse. She paused, let the tears come, then looked directly into the lens. I'm asking the people of Macon, and the people watching across this country, to demand justice. My family deserves it. This community deserves it. The performance was flawless. Carolyn Davis hadn't built an empire by being stupid. She knew exactly how to play the camera, exactly how to flip a narrative. And it worked. By Wednesday, public sympathy had shifted. The hashtag Justice for Todd started trending. Opinion pieces appeared. The danger of viral vigilante videos. A cable news panel debated whether Grace should face federal charges. Grace watched it all from her apartment, alone, suspended, her face on every screen. Half the country calling her a hero, the other half calling her a monster. But she wasn't watching the news for public opinion. She was watching Carolyn. Because behind the tears and the press conferences, Carolyn was making moves. The Southside land deal, 3 properties, 2 signatures away from closing. Anderson was dragging his feet, nervous since the video, but Carolyn was pushing hard. Grace had the recordings, every call, every text, every transaction. 8 months of evidence, enough to bring down Carolyn, Anderson, Todd, and every member of the crew. She needed one more thing, the final signed contract. The one that would prove Anderson took money from Peachtree Holdings in exchange for city approvals, and she knew exactly when he'd sign it. Thursday morning, Anderson's office, 9 a.m. Grace called Patricia Taylor, the civil rights attorney who'd agreed to represent her publicly. Patricia didn't know about the FBI. She thought she was defending an innocent blind woman. Patricia, I need you to file a motion to subpoena Carolyn's financial records from Peachtree Holdings, and Todd's phone, and the full security footage from the community center. I was already planning to. But Grace, are you okay? The news is brutal right now. I'm fine. You don't sound fine. I sound like someone with 48 hours to prove she's innocent. Patricia paused. Then let's not waste a second. I'll file tomorrow morning. Grace hung up, sat in the dark. The apartment was quiet. The noise outside, the news trucks, the hashtags, the angry strangers with opinions, felt like it belonged to a different world. She picked up her cane, held it across her lap, ran her thumb along the rattan grain. One more day, one more performance. Then the glasses come off. For good. Thursday morning, 9 a.m. Macon County Courthouse, room 204. The hallway smelled like floor polish and old paper. Every seat in the gallery was taken. Local reporters filled the first 2 rows. 3 cable news cameras lined the back wall. Denise sat in the 4th row, phone in her lap, not recording, just watching. Grace walked in last. White cane, dark glasses, a plain gray blazer over a white blouse. Patricia Taylor guided her elbow to the defense table. Grace sat down, folded her hands, and waited. Todd Wilson sat across the aisle with a wrist brace and a neck collar that looked brand new. Derek had his arm in a sling. Kyle was on crutches. They looked like survivors of a car accident, not 6 men who had cornered a woman in an alley. Carolyn sat behind them, black dress, tissue in hand, eyes already glistening. The prosecution went first. Assistant District Attorney Lawrence Coleman stood, buttoned his jacket, and played the edited video on a 60-inch screen. No context, no beginning, just Grace, cane in hand, systematically dropping 6 men in 10 seconds. The courtroom gasped. A woman in the gallery covered her mouth. "Your Honor," Coleman said, "this is not self-defense. This is a trained combatant who used a weapon disguised as a mobility aid to assault 6 unarmed men at a community event." He gestured toward Todd and his crew. "These men suffered broken bones, torn ligaments, and lasting nerve damage. One of them, Todd Wilson, was disarmed of a pocket tool that the defendant now claims was a deadly weapon." A pocket tool. That's what they were calling the knife. Coleman sat down. The gallery murmured. It didn't look good. Patricia stood up, calm, measured. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "Your Honor, the prosecution just showed you a movie. I'm going to show you the truth." She played Denise's unedited footage, full clip, from the beginning. The courtroom watched Todd grab Grace's cane, Kyle shove her into the wall, Derek block the exit. 6 men, each of them bigger, stronger, able-bodied, surrounding a woman they believed was blind. Then the knife. Todd pulling it from his pocket, 4 inches of steel reflecting the alley light. Patricia froze the frame. "That is not a pocket tool, Your Honor. That is a folding knife with a 4-inch blade, drawn on an unarmed blind woman by a man with 2 prior assault convictions." She let the silence sit for 3 seconds, then continued. "I also have security footage from the community center, a second angle that confirms the defendant was cornered, outnumbered, and physically struck before she ever raised her cane." The footage played. Wider angle, clearer. Every shove, every laugh, every moment of the setup that the prosecution's edit had sliced away. The gallery shifted. The murmurs changed tone. But Patricia wasn't done. "I'd like to call Shane Taylor to the stand." The courtroom stirred. Todd's head snapped toward Shane's seat. It was empty. Then the side door opened, and Shane walked in. No swagger, no phone, just a 23-year-old kid who looked like he hadn't slept in a week. Shane sat down, swore the oath, and broke open everything. "Carolyn paid us," he said. His voice cracked on the first word. "Every time we ran somebody off the block, she sent money through Todd. Cash app. Sometimes cash in envelopes. She told Todd who to target, when, how far to go." Patricia handed him printed screenshots. "Can you identify these messages?" Shane scrolled through them. "That's our group chat. Todd, me, Derek, Kyle, Jimmy, Briggs. Carolyn's number is the one at the top. She sent the orders. We followed them." "And the night of the block party?" Shane swallowed. "Carolyn texted Todd at 4 p.m. that day. Said, her exact words, 'Tonight, finish the blind girl. Make it loud. I want the whole block to see.'" The gallery erupted. The judge banged his gavel twice. Carolyn's tissue fell to the floor. Her attorney leaned in and whispered something urgent in her ear. She shook her head. Patricia turned to the bench. "Your Honor, I submit these messages, payment records, and Mr. Taylor's testimony as evidence that the attack on Grace Underwood was premeditated, coordinated, and financially motivated." The judge studied the documents. The room held its breath. Then Patricia said, "I'd like to call Grace Underwood to the stand." Grace stood, tapped her cane to the witness box, sat down, folded her hands. Coleman leaned forward. "Ms. Underwood, if you're truly blind, how did you fight off 6 men with that level of precision?" Grace tilted her head, paused. "My grandfather was a Marine. He taught me stick fighting when I was 12. He adapted it for me, by sound, by vibration, by spatial memory. I've trained every day for 12 years. By sound? Yes. You expect this court to believe you defeated 6 attackers, including a man with a knife, using sound alone? Rewatch moment number 3. The testimony. Grace was quiet for a moment. The whole courtroom leaned in. "Sir, let me ask you something. When those 6 men surrounded me in that alley, when they took my cane, shoved me into a wall, and pulled a knife, what was I supposed to do? Run?" She paused, let the word hang. "Run where? I can't see where away is. I can't see the exit. I can't see the blade. All I can do is stand where I am and fight with what I have." Silence. Complete. The kind that presses against your eardrums. Denise was crying in the 4th row. A reporter lowered her pen. Even Coleman looked down at his table. The judge cleared his throat, began to speak. And then the door at the back of the courtroom opened. 4 people walked in. Dark suits, credentials clipped to their belts. The first was a tall man with gray temples and a calm expression that said he'd walked into 100 courtrooms and owned every one of them. Senior Agent Raymond Brooks, FBI. Behind him, 3 agents carrying sealed file boxes. Raymond approached the bench. "Your Honor, I apologize for the interruption. My name is Senior Special Agent Raymond Brooks, Federal Bureau of Investigation. I'm here under authority of a federal warrant issued this morning by the U.S. District Court for the Middle District of Georgia." He turned to face the gallery. "Grace Underwood is not a blind receptionist. She is Special Agent Grace Underwood, assigned to our Civil Rights Division. She has been embedded in this community for the past 8 months as part of a federal investigation into systemic housing fraud, civil rights violations, and public corruption." The courtroom didn't gasp. It froze. Every mouth, every breath, every thought suspended. Grace stood up from the witness box, slowly, deliberately. She reached up and removed the dark glasses. Her eyes were open, clear, sharp. She looked across the courtroom, not searching, not guessing, and locked her gaze directly onto Carolyn Davis. Carolyn's face went white. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Then, barely a whisper, You can see?" Grace didn't blink. "I've seen everything. From day 1. Raymond set the file boxes on the prosecution's table. "These contain 8 months of surveillance recordings, financial transaction records, intercepted communications between Carolyn Davis and Councilman Brad Anderson, and documented evidence of coordinated intimidation targeting Black residents in 3 Macon neighborhoods." 2 agents moved to Todd. Handcuffs. Click. Derek next. Click. Kyle didn't resist. Jimmy put his hands up before they reached him. Briggs was already crying. A 5th agent approached Carolyn Davis. She stood up before he reached her, straightened her black dress, lifted her chin. She still had the tissue in her hand. "You have the right to remain silent," the agent said. At the back of the courtroom, Brad Anderson tried to slip out the side door. An agent was already there. "Councilman Anderson, please come with us." The judge sat back in his chair. He looked at Grace, standing in the witness box, glasses in her hand, eyes open for the first time in public, and shook his head slowly. All charges against the defendant are dismissed. The gavel came down, and the courtroom broke open. Applause, shouting, cameras flashing, reporters yelling questions. Denise sat frozen in her seat, tears streaming, both hands covering her mouth. Grace stepped down from the witness box. She walked straight to Denise. The crowd parted. Denise looked up at her. "You lied to me." "I know." 8 months. "I know. Was any of it real?" Grace knelt down, took Denise's hands, looked her in the eyes, for the first time with nothing between them. Every single moment. The friendship, the laughter, the cornbread runs, all of it. The only thing that wasn't real was the blindness. Everything else, everything that mattered, that was me. Denise broke. She pulled Grace in and held on. The cameras caught it. The crowd went quiet. And for 10 seconds, in the middle of a courtroom that had just exploded, 2 women held each other, and the whole world watched. The footage from that courtroom hit the internet before Grace even walked out the front door. Not the fight video, not the edited clip. The moment she took off the glasses. The moment her eyes, clear, sharp, seeing, locked onto Carolyn Davis, and the whole room understood. That clip alone pulled 80 million views in 72 hours. But the aftermath moved even faster. Todd Wilson was charged with assault, criminal harassment, intimidation, and conspiracy. His bail was denied. Derek Moore, Kyle Brown, and Jimmy caught the same charges, plus organized intimidation under Georgia state law. Briggs, the newest member, flipped within 24 hours and gave a full statement. Shane Taylor, the one who walked into that courtroom and told the truth, received a reduced sentence in exchange for his cooperation. He was the first domino, and he knew it. Carolyn Davis faced the heaviest count. Federal charges, wire fraud, public corruption, conspiracy to violate civil rights. Racketeering tied to the systematic displacement of black families across 3 Macon neighborhoods over 6 years. The U.S. Attorney's Office estimated the total fraud at over $14 million. She was denied bail. Her attorney filed 3 appeals. All 3 were rejected. Peachtree Holdings, her property empire, was seized by federal order. 42 rental units, 3 commercial properties, every single asset frozen pending trial. The company that had terrorized an entire community was gone overnight. Councilman Brad Anderson didn't even try to fight. He resigned the morning after the arrests. By afternoon, he was in a federal building with his own attorney negotiating a cooperation deal. He gave up names, dates, account numbers, and signed contracts, including the South Side land deal that Grace had spent her final 48 hours waiting for. That signature was the last nail, the one that connected every dollar, every threat, every family that was pushed out of their home. The nonprofit Legal Aid Office on Whitman Avenue reopened the following Monday. The board issued a public apology to Grace. Reverend James Moore stood at the front desk, Grace's old desk, and read a statement to the local news. "We failed her. This office is supposed to protect people. Instead, we let fear protect us. That changes today." The office received a federal grant within 6 weeks. Triple the original budget, 2 new attorneys, a full-time community outreach coordinator. The waiting list for legal aid dropped from 9 months to 9 days. 3 other communities in Georgia opened investigations into similar housing fraud schemes within a month of the Macon verdict. Families who had been displaced, some as far back as 4 years, began filing claims to recover their homes. Grace Underwood became the face of something bigger than a courtroom. She appeared on national television 2 weeks after the trial, a daytime talk show, millions watching. She sat in a cream-colored chair, no glasses, no cane, wearing a navy blazer and a calm expression. The host leaned forward. "Special Agent Underwood, what was the hardest part?" Grace didn't hesitate. "It wasn't pretending to be blind. I trained for that. I was ready for that." She paused, looked down at her hands. "The hardest part was seeing everything they did. To me, to the neighbors, to the families who packed up and left in the middle of the night, and pretending I couldn't see any of it. Standing there with my eyes open behind those glasses while someone kicked me down and choosing not to fight back. Not because I couldn't, because if I fought too soon, Carolyn would walk free and do it again somewhere else." The studio was silent. "I had to let them hurt me so the evidence could protect everyone else. That was the job, and I'd do it again." Hashtag Justice for Grace trended for 9 consecutive days. Hashtag Stand Up With Your Cane became a rallying cry for disability rights groups across the country. Hashtag Cane Girl, the original hashtag, was printed on t-shirts, murals, and protest signs from Atlanta to Chicago. 2 state legislatures introduced what the media called Underwood Amendments, bills expanding legal protections for self-defense by disabled individuals. Both passed within the year. The FBI used the Macon case as a training model at Quantico. New recruits studied it, not just the undercover technique, but the restraint. The discipline of standing still when every instinct screams to fight. Grace's cane, the rattan core, custom-weighted stick she'd carried for 8 months, was placed in a glass display case at FBI headquarters. A small brass plaque underneath read, "Carried by Special Agent Grace Underwood, Macon, Georgia. Disguised as weakness, used as strength." But Grace didn't stop carrying a cane. She kept one in the trunk of her car, just in case. "You never know," she said in her last interview, smiling for the first time on camera. "Old habits." 6 months later, Macon looked different. Not the buildings, not the streets. What changed was the silence. The kind that used to mean fear. Now it was gone. The federal court ordered restitution for every family Carolyn Davis had displaced, 26 families across 3 neighborhoods. Some had moved to Atlanta, some to Savannah, some had left Georgia entirely. One by one, they started coming home. Mrs. Patterson was first, the elderly neighbor who'd brought Grace cornbread and told her to run. She'd sold her house on Birch Street to Peachtree Holdings for 1/3 of its value after Todd's crew slashed her tires 3 nights straight. After the trial, she got it back. The Hendersons returned in March, the Carters in April. By summer, Birch Street had block parties again. Real ones. Just music and smoke and kids running through sprinklers. Grace was at one of those parties. Not undercover, not playing a role. Just standing in the grass with a paper plate, talking to neighbors who finally knew her real name. Denise was next to her, camera in hand, always. Their friendship didn't heal overnight. Weeks of silence after the trial. Denise was hurt, not by the mission, but by the lie. 8 months of believing she was protecting a blind woman who didn't need protecting. Grace didn't let go. She showed up at Denise's door with takeout and no excuses. "I can't undo the lie. But every time you stood up for me, you weren't protecting a cover story. You were protecting a real person who was really getting hurt. That was never fake." A week later, Denise called. 4 words. "I have an idea." They founded the Underwood Holloway Project, a nonprofit documenting civil rights abuses in small communities across the South. Denise ran operations. Grace consulted on investigations. Grace also opened the Underwood Method, free self-defense classes in community centers, 4 cities the first year. Every class open to women, disabled individuals, and anyone ever told they were too weak to fight back. She taught with a cane, always a cane. Carolyn Davis was convicted on all federal counts. 18 years. Todd Wilson, 12. Derek Moore, 8. Kyle Brown, 6. Jimmy and Briggs, 4 each. Brad Anderson, 5 years and a lifetime ban from public office. Shane Taylor served 11 months. When he got out, he enrolled in community college. He never spoke to Todd again. The cane sits in a glass case at FBI headquarters. The brass plaque reads, "Carried by Special Agent Grace Underwood, Macon, Georgia. Disguised as weakness, used as strength." But if you visit Grace at one of her classes, you'll see another cane, rattan core, custom-weighted, leaning against the wall. "Just in case," she says. Then she smiles. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been counted out? Tell me in the comments. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Hit subscribe, ring the bell. Stories like Grace's don't get told unless people like you keep showing up.
That cane now sits in the last case at FBI headquarters. The plaque reads, "This guy at weakness, used as strength." Ray saw everything, every shot, every slur, every neighbor pulling down their blinds, and she chose every single day not to fly back. Not because she couldn't, because 26 displaced families exhausted more than she deserved relief. That's what strength really looked like. Not the 10 seconds in that alley, the 8 month before it, standing still when everything inside you is screaming to scream. And Denise, she had no badge, no mission, no orders. She just saw someone getting hurt and refused to look away. Sometimes the person without the plan is the one with the most courage. Weakness isn't falling down. Weakness is watching someone fall and choosing to be comfortable. 30 people stood in that parking lot. Not one moved. And that's the part that stayed with me. Because it's easy to say you go do something. But when the moment comes, when it's real, when it's loud, when there's risk, will they be the one who step forward, or the one who remember it later and wishes you had? Tell me in the comments. It reaches everyone. If this story moves you, share it with someone who needs it. Subscribe, hit that bell. The next story might be even wider. Your worth is never defined by how they treat you, only by how you rise.